Imagine, if you will, carrying 1,000 pounds, very limited in almost every way compared to what we do today. And imagine if someone came up to you one day and said, you know what, I'm gonna give you the experience for only 24 hours to have the full body experience to be a world-class Olympic athlete. I think because you've tasted that, maybe you start walking a little bit more, maybe you start moving, maybe you stop eating junk food or whatever it is. But because you've tasted it, you now believe in it, and you may work a little bit more towards that. And I offer this analogy because most of us in Western society have grown up spiritually obese. For a lot of us, we need a shock to the system to know what's possible. However, after tasting it, we also have the opportunity to work towards that. In the 1,000-pound analogy, of course, you're not gonna go into the gym first day and do 20 pull-ups, but if you go every day, a month or 2 or 3, there will be change. Meditation and spiritual practice is no different.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I want to give a shout out to a very good friend, Tina Sharkey, who has been on her soul quest since a pretty incredible operation that turned out to turn out just fine. But she decided to start a Substack called Sparks of Soul. And it's really good. I've really been enjoying it. She just started it at the end of last year. But she's given me a lot of love over the years, especially for Love Conquers Fear. And I really appreciate that, Tina. And I really encourage people listening to this to tune in to her, because she's really bearing her heart and leading with a lot of love, a lot of wisdom to share with you all. One of her pieces, which is called Choosing Love, has a lot of synchronicity with Pippa Malmgren's piece on Substack, talking about the balancing of tech and being very heart-centered. That was a really beautiful synchronicity between a piece that Tina wrote, and so I do plan to connect them, and they're on a similar journey. And as I've reminded everyone from the beginning of this podcast, it's really going to take Team Humanity. It's all of us leaning in, doing little acts of kindness, sometimes very big acts of kindness along the way, so that humanity ascends to that mystical or metaphorical or both place where heaven and earth come together. And that's what this project is all about. As I've said many times, I'm self-funding this. This is my soul song. And it's really rooted in a deep love for all of humanity. And I am really seeing people open up more and more. And I think that at least that's in part related to what I'm doing. But I also think that just overall, we're having a consciousness awakening. And it's coinciding with AI for a reason. We're going to dive deep on that today. And I am really, really excited to have one of my best friends, a real soul brother, on, Niraj Mehta. Thank you so much, Niraj. Yeah, so good to be here with you.
It's so wonderful to be here, Brett. Thank you for inviting me and creating this space.
You bet.
For really following your soul's heart song and for bringing this project to the world.
Well, thank you. Well, as you know, we've only known each other for a year, but I think we've known each other for many lifetimes before.
Yes.
And it was just immediate, connection when we dropped in together. And we did a meditation together today with Jason Karp, who is on episode 3. And we did a meditation yesterday with Eben Alexander. Both were amazing. I mean, really transcendent meditations. And we're going to dive into Siddha Maha Yoga at some point in this. But I want to first start out with just the audience getting to know you, because you've had an amazing capitalistic background with, some bumps along the way like we've all had. But maybe we can just talk about, how you grew up.
Sure.
And, ultimately how you found your ability to really manifest resources or energy through capitalism, and how it got you to this beautiful point that you're at today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I I was born in Western India in a town of Ahmedabad, Gujarat. I came to the States at 2.5, and I moved around quite a bit as a kid, mostly in the Midwest and East Coast. And my father's a retired dentist, and childhood for me looked like 1 elementary school, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. And I had my undergraduate training in physics from William & Mary and my master's in computer science and engineering. And I will describe my early years and journey as really being indicative of what I believe all of us are seeking in the human experience when our souls come into a body, is the craving of human connection and love and acceptance. And for me, in all those moves and change of environment, I had a natural tendency to seek achievement and performance and accomplishment, whether it be goals or medals or tournaments. I played tennis growing up, trumpet, and thinking that one extra achievement and performance would get me closer to that unconditional love and acceptance that I believe all of us crave as humans. And that led to basically what I describe in Act 1 of my life journey as being in a rush to go through the checklist of life. And for me, that started with grades and schools and degrees and a job, career, business, eventually getting to marriage and home and kids. And at one point, simply running out of stuff to check. But before I get there, just to fill in the gaps, I like to describe my professional journey as a triangle. And like you, I've lived in multiple corners of the triangle. The first corner being a founder, starting something out of nothing, which I've done 5 times, and it's definitely a passion. The second corner I call being an operator, which is running any kind of project, business, or endeavor at scale, which I've done for a decade. And the third corner being an investor, helping impart energy into new entrepreneurs and ideas. And I've been doing that professionally for 26 years. So I've lived in all 3 corners of the triangle. I was an embedded systems software engineer, and then a founder entrepreneur. Then I was a research analyst, and then I moved to San Francisco in '99, venture capitalist. And then I had a decade in the hedge fund industry, and I was fortunate to start an investment firm without any assets, track record, or prior experience with a whopping 1.25 million under management. I started a fund of hedge fund business. And through that decade, we were able to not only grow to a couple billion in assets, but more importantly, no down years in performance. We were up every year, including '02, including '08.
You and Jason Karp.
Yeah, we share that DNA. Mm-hmm. And this is leading to the end of what I call Act 1 of my career or professional or even life journey. Is I had the opportunity to monetize my stake at a very generous multiple in 2010, which I did. It also coincided with the year I became a father. And quickly, I realized after that happened, I had nothing else to check on my happiness formula of life. I call it the A through G formula of life, as I just outlined. And what I realized, that every time I checked something off, I was in a rush to check off the next thing. Right. And after and when it felt like instead of celebrating the next check, I raced to the next check. And after I had nothing else to check, I was so anticlimactic and disappointed. I said, oh my gosh, I got nothing more else. What more else is there? And I describe it as having this big void inside me, and I was throwing anything and everything I could, whether it was possessions or accomplishments or recognition, and it still asked for more. And I describe this period as a very interestingly surprising challenge. It's almost as if you're craving a train destination your whole life and career, and you arrive and you're like, oh my gosh, what else is there? So I'd say it took about a couple of years for me to begin to ease into that skin. Another way I describe it is like, imagine being a hammer and you've been doing nothing but banging in nails your entire life. And all of a sudden the hammer's hung up on the wall and the hammer just wants a nail, and the hammer's told, you don't need to bang nails anymore.
Right.
But the hammer's disappointed and feels useless and was desperately looking for nails. And I didn't have, at that point, any purpose or meaning. But that's what I call Act One.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it reminds me of this story that Swamiji Parthasarathi told me. You know, I've studied Vedanta at the Vedanta Academy, which is right outside of Pune in India. And he tells this story of being on this beautiful yacht, because the wealthy in India tend to be extremely wealthy, and there's obviously lots and lots of poverty. Biggest country in the world now, 1.46 billion people. And he said that he's on this yacht and he's looking around, and you know, he's really completely detached from, you know, there's no material item which owns Parthasarathi at this point. And he gave up his Rolls Royce when he was a teenager. You know, he was born into a wealthy family and just got detached from all materiality and just studied Vedanta. And eventually people started to ask him what he was working on, and he started to tell them. And then eventually a following of people saying, hey, I would love to learn about this path to happiness, because that's really what Vedanta is all about, is getting mastery over the mind and realizing that the mind is like a child ungoverned, where it goes between states of worries about the past, anxiety about the future, and you miss the only moment that matters, which is this eternal present moment that you and I are in. And so he's standing on this yacht with one of the wealthiest guys in India, and he's like, you know, congratulations, you know, I hope you enjoyed this. And the guy said, you see over there? Look across the bay. It's like one twice as big. And he says, that's next. Can't even enjoy, you know, what he's on. And there is no path to lasting happiness through accumulation of, you know, money or energy. Now, money used in a beautiful way, in a very heart-centered, loving way as energy, can really help change the world. And there's lots and lots of examples of that. And that's a different thing than being attached to status and checking the next thing off the box. And I'm curious, as you really dive into your story, like, what were some of the wake-up calls that got you to be like, hey,
right,
time to wake up. This is not, you know, I should also give a shout out that Mark Gober, who was on episode 2 of the podcast, you know, one of my favorite authors and one of your best friends as well, who, thank you, he moved to Austin. And he was at the dinner actually with you, me, and Evan Alexander, which was amazing over here. But he, you know, he had a pretty hard wake up call too, where, you know, it turned him into kind of a meta analysis for the world of, this is what you need to know about consciousness. And we'll get into consciousness today and all the things that happen as a result. But that story that he told, you know it well, I know it well, but I would just remind people that was a really, really good episode on how the brain receives consciousness and what the implications of that are. But yeah, what were the big wake up calls for you in your life?
Thank you. And this basically is my act 2 or part 2 of my life journey, which really began 13 years ago, where after going through the motions and realizing I thought I had everything I ever wanted, but I was incredibly unfulfilled and unhappy. The way I describe what I refer to as my truth-seeking journey or spiritual journey or consciousness journey, for me, was like a pendulum swing. It started in 2013 with experiences in psychedelics and things like LSD, 4 trips to Burning Man in a row, plant medicines, intentionally held, experiences like 5-MeO, DMT. However, in the course of those experiences, it also led to an opposite end of the pendulum swing. This is over a span of about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And while I was experiencing shifts in consciousness and things that I never thought I would experience, they also led to an extreme where through those series of experiences, I became very disconnected with reality. And to be very clear, two very different versions of me. The guy who started that journey was clean cut, driving sports cars, chasing the external, really fun guy to be around, caught up in, as you say, the world of form and material, and the world telling him he's doing great, he's winning,
you're winning,
keep on at it. Yeah. And then through those experiences, the guy who came out after 5 years had a beard down to here, hair down to here, pretty anti-capitalist, and really was struggling for meaning and purpose. And through a series of experiences, had a wake-up call. It was October 2017, and without getting into all the details and specifics, I was at a gathering and had an experience that really caused me to realize I'd gone too far, basically. Yeah. And through an extreme experience that fortunately no one was damaged, injured, or hurt, I said, okay, I need to take a break. And what originally started as a 30-day cleanse ended up becoming a way of life. And so in the immediate months, as I basically cleaned up and sobered up and saw reality, an experience happened a few months later where three things happened within a span of a week. I had a one-day White Tantra Kundalini Yoga workshop, which I'd never been to before. A friend invited me. I had a private water ceremony with the Balinese priestess Ida Rasi Ali, who visited US for the first time. And I was doing some shamanic healing with a friend without medicines, wounds in my ancestry, wounds with the feminine. And immediately, again, not sure which of these experiences got the credit, I woke up and the next day, and through me spilled a document without efforting, without trying, without thinking, that I refer to today as my manifesto. Mm-hmm. And it was 15 sentences, and it really was a rebirth for me that day. I'll not forget. It almost was exactly 8 years ago. And that day, I describe it as a multi-lifetime deal with the divine, where I said from this day forward, it's not about me, it's not about my kids, it's not about my employees or founders or companies or friends. It's about one thing and one thing only from this day forward. It's about highest service to all life, seen, unseen, visible, invisible, known, unknown. And please, universe, divine, God, creator, take me as your vessel in whatever way you choose. And that has become a true north. And that day began a healing journey for me between those two versions of myself that I described that really were at odds with each other inside me. The guy who started that pendulum swing and the guy who came out the other end were at war with each other inside me. And what I realized that day forward is by creating this common North Star, we were able to come together as one and work together and heal wounds I didn't know I was carrying at the time. And that day began a series of things and experiences that really have served me well, including a form of effortless meditation that we can talk about later called Siddha Maha Yoga that changed my life.
I'm into.
And we also, so I basically went from an extreme lifestyle to a monk lifestyle. You know, like you, I've been now plant-based for 10 years, you know, free of substances and medicines and alcohol. So I have been living this monk-like lifestyle, and I've been meditating hours a day for almost 8 years. And so really mostly in a cave, I'd say a bulk of the last 7-8 years, and slowly emerging out in the last 2 years and finding my way back to reconnect. And yeah, I'm now extremely happy and grateful for this journey finding its way through me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up psychedelics, because episode 25 was with Patrick Gentempo, and we really cover in that episode, he created this documentary called Psychedelics Revealed. And we really cover in that episode how, the intentionality is really important if you're going to use plant medicine, and going into it is a very sacred experience and not a place you're supposed to stay. It's a place you're supposed to go, get transcendent downloads, life guidance, and then integrate into your life. And, I had Evan Alexander just on, and he made the point that he's met so many people that have told him that they've done like ayahuasca hundreds of times, and he was saying this in a loving way. So I really want to make that emphasis, because he is the embodiment of love. I think you would agree with that. We saw that come out in spades, being with him, meditating with him. But he said that, he doesn't find them having integrated the spiritual component of that. And I really want to emphasize that, because, I've talked about how I'm very pro-psychedelic. I am. I really believe that, ibogaine, for example, over 80% of the time, we're now finding that it will heal vets from suicidal thoughts. It'll heal alcoholics, opioid addicts. So
Right.
it can be a very valuable tool. But my thematic for this year is all about embodiment,
Right.
because I've been on this soul quest. I've read lots of books at this point, well over 55 books. And I'm really focused on embodying, what I've learned. And my soul is actually telling me that that's what I should be doing. And I am not saying that I'm at the point where I wouldn't do plant medicine, but it's going to continue to be very, very intentional and very sacred, and only when I have a clear calling. And frankly, I've never done it unless I've had a very clear calling, and I've never done it at a party. And so just for people listening to this, I want to thank you, because you've really been a guide for me. And as I've said, we've probably been working together lifetime to lifetime, but you've been a guide for me that's shown up in my life. Again, thanks to Mark Gober, who brought us together, who has helped me realize, like, I need to do more of the meditation and more embodiment, because I have transcendent experiences with meditation too. And Evan Alexander, he talks a lot about that he both talked about on the podcast as well as with us, that his meditations are very transcendent. They're very much like a journey. And the better you get with meditation, the more you connect with the divine, with source, with consciousness,
Sure.
With God, whatever you would like to call it, the more you get messages to act on. And so that's a very powerful modality that doesn't require any medicine. Part of the reason I'm so pro-psychedelic is because it has been transcendent for me. And I think you would agree at the beginning, maybe it was transcendent for you.
Yeah.
But then anything taken to an extreme like that, it's balance in all things. I want to invoke someone that literally showed up as a guide for Mark Gober when he was writing his books. It's Dr. David Hawkins. I read How to Surrender to God.
Yeah.
It was a book that Mark recommended on that episode. And one of the things he talks about, which is so funny, which has a synchronicity with this, is, it's a series of lectures. He's really comical, just like Anthony DeMello is in the book Awareness. Both are great on Audible. And he says, I see all these people that move to Sedona, and they've completely devoured themselves from materiality. And then they get into, they've sold their house, they've done all this stuff. They're like, I'm going to just be one. And they end up getting into their place, and then they go out to have dinner a couple of times, and then they realize they need a refrigerator, and they start to reaccumulate. And he's like, the whole point is not to be owned by your materiality, to realize that it's a gift. Like, I feel very fortunate Deborah and I, when we got married, I had $1,000. She had $2,000. I feel very fortunate to live in this house. But I'm not defined by my materiality. I'm defined by my soul growth. And that's what's most important to me, my relationships, the brotherhood we have. That to me is so much more valuable than any type of ephemeral materiality.
Sure.
So I just want to make that point, because I think it's a very important and responsible thing to do for the Love Conquers Fear project.
Absolutely. I can share on this topic of psychedelics, and I'm glad you brought it up, Brett, because I think they were a very vital part of my journey for where I was at the time. And I don't think I was ready to look at what I do today. And when I talk to friends who are earlier on their journeys, who are at the front end of considering that, I like to offer a visual analogy, which I'll put forth here as a thought experiment. So imagine, if you will, in our current heights and bone structures, carrying 1,000 pounds, independent of whatever caused us to be in that state. As challenging as that is, just imagine what life might be like with being 1,000 pounds, right? Very limited in almost every way compared to what we do today. And imagine if someone came up to you one day and said, you know what? I'm going to give you the experience for only 24 hours to have the full body visual experience, to be a world-class Olympic athlete at the peak of physical form. And after years or decades in that body, you're given that. But after having that experience, you come back to that 1,000-pound frame. What do you think might happen? I think because you've tasted that, maybe you start walking a little bit more, maybe you start moving, maybe you stop eating junk food or whatever it is. But because you've tasted it, you now believe in it, and you may work a little bit more towards that. And of course, there can also be a tendency to want to just go after that experience over and over again. And I offer this analogy because most of us in Western society have grown up spiritually obese. And hence why I use that metaphor, because for a lot of us, we need a shock to the system to know what's possible. However, after tasting it, we also have the opportunity to work towards that. In the 1,000-pound analogy, you can start moving every day. You can start working. Of course, you're not going to go into the gym first day and do 20 pull-ups. But if you go every day, a month or 2 or 3, there will be change. Meditation and spiritual practice is no different. Most of us did not grow up with it in a day-to-day format since we were young children. Many people in societies all over the world do. But for me and a lot of my friends, that was not the case. So we're starting decades later, basically having never been to the gym in our lives, and 1,000 pounds spiritually. And psychedelics for me were critical because I was a 1,000-pound person a decade ago. And I didn't know where and how to begin on my spiritual journey. But after shocking me into my journey, it gave me a destination to move towards. Some people may be way more capable of going there directly. But for me, it's just about having that practice. And then the neuroscience says it takes 60 days to form a habit. And if you do something after 60 days, you don't even think about it. And for me, after 8 years, for sure, meditation is no different than brushing my teeth or going to bed or showering. I'll notice if I miss, but for me, I don't think about scheduling it in. It's just part of my day.
Right. Well, you've made it habitual, just, like you said, just like brushing your teeth. And that's the important aspect of it. I mean, I've been vegetarian now for 16 years, and most people I know who have been inspired to try it, maybe they watched the documentary, The Game Changers, which really was...
I saw that.
It was so good. I was there actually for a very early premiere before they even had it on streaming, with Rick Esselstyn, with John Mackey. And it was probably a year before they actually got it on a streaming platform. And they asked me what I thought afterwards. And I said, this is really the documentary that has been needed for the movement, because it's about human potential instead of about animal suffering and environmental catastrophe, which is super important to me. I want to emphasize that. And it should be super important. But to really move, the human heart for considering vegetarianism, what's in it specifically for them. And it really did lead to a lot of people trying it. But the challenge is most people that I know that got inspired to try it didn't make it over what I call the kind of 2-week hump, because as John Mackey said on this podcast and has said in many books, isn't it amazing how everyone around the world loves their diet?
Right.
And what does this tell you about humanity? The body is very adaptable. However, the gut biome, where we have lots of organisms that live with us, many trillions actually, live in the gut biome. And we have the second most neurons in our body, in the gut biome. We do think with our gut, as well. And, with the biome, when you go into vegetarianism, it does have to reset. And that causes a bit of stress, because the biome will actually send signals like, what are you doing? You're changing your diet. Where's my meat? Where's this? Where's that?
Totally.
By the way, that'll happen if you change from a fast food diet to just a meat-based diet. Either way, it'll happen. If you radically change your diet, it's going to, paleo, you go to paleo, whatever it is. And so a lot of people don't make it past that 2-week hump. But when you get on the other side of it, it's bliss. You feel like a freaking racehorse. Like you get to the other side of it. Now all of a sudden, as Rip Esselstyn says, he authored the Engine 2 diet. Great guy. And Deborah and I are investors in his company, Plant Strong, which has amazing shelf-stable, plant-based food, really good food for you. He's this embodiment of this triathlete and super amazing guy. His dad is Carl Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic. But he points out, look, this is a vasodilator, so you're getting a lot more oxygen to your muscles. It's very good for the brain. I think it's incredible for the soul, because it is very ephemeral. We talked about materiality. The pleasure of the taste on the tongue is a few seconds. It's just a few seconds, and then it's fuel in your body. And so, the intentionality of what the intimacy of what you're putting into your body, and what is the karmic kind of value, I'll say, of that, and how much does it make you feel? And you can tell that, vegetarians sometimes aren't very popular at the dinner table, and I'm not in your face about it. And whenever I go out to eat, I have no judgment about it. I'm just trying to make the case of why I got here, and I think you would agree why you got there, is that most people do not want to think about how that arrived on their plate. Right. It's just tastes good, end of story. And that's why these foods have disassociated names. They're not actually you don't call I'm eating cow. It's like I'm eating a steak. Right.
Totally.
So it's just an important point that if people ever want to try it, if they're inspired by it and want to feel like what it feels like to get on the other side, stick with it for 4 weeks, because once you get on the downslope after that 2 weeks, you start to feel like a racehorse, and then that feeling doesn't ever end. And then, to add even more to a lack of popularity, probably for what I'm saying right now, if you also give up alcohol, holy moly, then you don't have any bad days the next day, because that's just, yes, it's a social lubricant. Yeah. It's had its role, but it really is just a poison. It's just a toxin.
So I know we have not shared this topic, but it's funny, it's coming up now.
We're quantumly entangled, as we've learned.
We are very much in the field since I've been here. So when I gave up meat, it was exactly 10 years ago. And it was based on one conversation with a friend I was hosting from out of town who really pushed me into a corner intellectually. And my former wife was vegetarian her entire life. And at the time, I'd be considered paleo. I'd cut out sugars and refined things, but I was very much a meat eater. And she came back to me because the friend I was hosting from out of town was vegan and gluten-free. I didn't even know what that meant. And I asked her, where do I take this guy? Because I had my steak place and my sushi place. I was like, I always had my business places. And I found a place that could cater to his diet. Anyway, so we had this really impactful conversation. And I was so affected by it. And, you know, my former wife asked me, she said, how was that vegan gluten-free dinner of yours? I was like, yeah, it was actually not bad. And she was kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit. And I said, I think I'm going to try it. And she started laughing. And I honestly didn't think I could last 24 hours. I just thought maybe I'll just try it for 24 hours and see what it's like. It was difficult. And it's so funny because it was exactly 4 weeks. And I remember this very well. The first week was difficult. The second week was also difficult. I would go to business dinners. There'd be a lot of meat on the table and I was craving it. My body was wanting it and craving it. And I kind of resisted. Not easy.
Your biome was freaking out. Like,
but
put that in.
The secret of how it clicked for me was exactly 4 weeks. And what happened was, without getting extremely graphic, is I was basically purging from inside my colon and cleansing layers and layers of things that had accumulated without me being even conscious or aware of it. And as I tell people who have been curious to explore this path, the analogy that I give is, imagine wearing 7 layers of clothing your entire life. And all of a sudden you take off a layer and another layer and another, and finally the sun hits your skin for the very first time. And that's exactly what my digestion felt like. And it had never felt like that in as long as I could remember, where I was being able to like instantly process. And I love your racehorse because I basically say it's like going from driving, I don't know, a Cadillac to a BMW or a Ferrari, where you can feel like a coin that you go over. And my digestion had never felt so high performance. And the moment I felt that, I said, I'm not going back. The first 4 weeks were not easy, but the moment I tasted that, I was sold. But to prove your point.
Right. Yeah. So getting to these experiences that you've had and where you're at now, you know, really situated in your life, what is your theory of consciousness at this point?
Wow. Very beautiful, open-ended, all-consuming question. First of all, also deep shout out to our mutual brother, Mark Gober, who connected us, because he has been a really important part of my own consciousness journey and have turned on almost everyone that's meaningful in my life, personally or professionally, onto his body of work. So I can't not reference him. I think for me, in my own journey, consciousness for me today starts with the truth that I exist. And we can call it the oneness that some of us have tasted in other realities and experiences, or the one. But I think for me, the beginning of the consciousness discussion starts with knowing that I am one, whether it's one with my own body, one with nature, one with the divine, one with all creation. But knowing that I exist and I am, I think, is the foundational layer on which I can build my own consciousness experience and definition, which everyone has their own. So, but yes, I do believe it is the most pronounced, fundamental, common denominator across all humanity, across all life, that we have an opportunity to now explore, realize, materialize, and elevate. Starting with each of our own souls. And then more broadly. Yeah.
Mark Gober, in his books, he calls it the one mind, that we're all part of that one, you know, I'll say mind of the universe. Chris Beisch, that's the way he talks about it in his book, LSD and the Mind of the Universe, Diamonds from Heaven, which was episode 36 of the podcast. Amazing. He was he also stayed with us for several days, and what a beautiful human being. That's a great episode. And that because we're all connected and we're all one, the way we treat each other is actually directly the way we should be treating ourselves, and looking at the unity that way. And if you look at it biologically, we're 99.9% the same DNA-wise across the world. And most people don't even think about that. You know, we kind of fight a lot about that 0.1% difference. And you know, it's there's a lot of reasons for that. And I would like to ask you about that, because there's, you know, we've touched on the podcast quite a bit on the illusion of separation. And I know that you've got a really pretty pronounced way that you discuss that. And I'd like to educate people on what you think.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because, as you said, you know, the way I like to describe it is that what unites and binds us is far greater than what's perceived to separate and divide us. Mm-hmm. And as I was deep into my journey the last several years, I received some insights that I hadn't really considered or thought about. And one of these was the illusion of separation. And this may likely come out in some content form in other ways in the coming months and years. But for now, I'll just simply share that I was able to name 13 forms of separation that I'll cover here for you and the audience. And by no means is this meant to be definitive and exhaustive. This is simply meant to be a starting point to frame the awareness around how we say, I end here and Brett starts there.
Right. I mean, I'll say that I know you really well at this point, and you're deeply rooted in humility. And the reality is that none of us can fully decode whatever the reality we're in is. Right. But grasping at it is super, super fun. Yeah. And will make you a lot more loving if you actually pursue it with boundless curiosity, just like Max Planck and others that really were the patriarchs of the quantum physics field, became much more spiritual when they saw the connectedness of all things.
Right. 100%. And so part of bringing this awareness out is for people to become aware of these illusions, or as we say in the Vedic tradition, the Maya of separation. And so I'm just going to name these. 6 of these we're born with. So the moment a soul comes into a baby's vessel, 6 are shaped and imprinted out of the gate. What are those 6? So number 1 is the gender in anatomy. Number 2 is the appearance, face, skin, etc. 3rd is the location where that baby is born. 4th is the language that's spoken to it. Of course, we learn others. The 5th is the nationality or passport, which doesn't always coincide with the location. And the 6th is the name that's given to it. So each of those 6 create an imprint of some level of initial identity that takes root, and that begins to cast an impression in each of our soul's journeys into a body's journey. So that's the first 6.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay. The next 7 are a little bit more subtle, because these are ones that we acquire over time through our choices and through our social and our family and our professional structures. Mm-hmm. And I'll just briefly explain each one.
Great.
The first is education and profession, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's not just the type of school, did you go to school or not, and whatever professional title creates its own identity.
Right.
The next is competition in and of itself. For a lot of us who relate to that, it may have started out in sports and academics to really differentiate, but the very construct of all competition is zero-sum game. Winner needs a loser, or to win and distinguish has to be separated. Mm-hmm. And of course that translates for you and me and a lot of our friends into business. Mm-hmm. But itself is a form of separation. The third is property or money. Mm-hmm. In those who have accumulated or choose or are gracious to accumulate resources to those who don't, because that creates its own level of separation. Mm-hmm. The fourth is lifestyle choices. We talked about one of them being plant-based. And just to give some very broad examples, one could be carnivore or vegan. Another could be extrovert, introvert, or, a number of different lifestyle choices. Oh, I'm a party animal, I'm a hermit, but they lead to identities.
All right.
The next one is relationships. Mm-hmm. And this can be single, couple, parents, gay, straight, all the different relationship permutations that lead to their own forms of identity. Mm-hmm. The next one is age. And this one is a little bit more subtle because once upon a time, we were a lot more inclusive across generations. And over the last century, especially, we ship our kids away to school, we ship our elders away to retirement homes. But once upon a time, we were more intergenerationally connected across a tribe and a fire. And so today, the separation across age can be like, oh, you're too young, meaning talking to a kid, to know that or do that or allowed, or you're too old to work here. There can be many manifestations of thinking that age creates almost segregation in some ways. And then the final of the 7 that we acquire over time is perhaps the deepest, biggest, and most pronounced one I have found in my experience, which is separation from self. And this means forgiveness, healing with our own vessels and souls and journeys on anything and everything we have done to cause that self-worth and blocks and resistances to our own self-love.
Right.
And that impacts all the others. But that's, in a nutshell, what I have defined for myself and given myself an opportunity to create awareness of each of these contributing to the false sense of identity. Because once, as we both have, and I am grateful to you for your recommendation for Journey of Souls, which is one of the most important books.
Amazing book by Michael Newton. Yeah.
Last year had a great impact on me. Yeah. Because when we have experiences with our souls, it really gives us a sense of what is our real identity. It's not being, Indian or American or a fund manager or this or that or a man, all the things that I just listed. It means that our identity is beyond all of these constructs. Mm-hmm. And our souls are timeless, are eternal, are boundless. And if they truly are infinite fractals of this infinite divine creator and God, it means we are the same. And as we can move past these 13 forms of separation or others that I've missed, it gives us a chance to reconnect with our true nature of who we are and what we are.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said. And for me, it intersects with fear, scarcity in terms of a mindset. And it's understandable in many ways how we got here because of what we prioritize. Now, some of it was we were just trying to survive. As I've said many times on this podcast, we've only had electricity for 0.1% of our evolutionary time on as Homo sapiens, even though it'd be longer if we say, well, we derive from hominids. Homo sapiens have been around for 300,000 years, but hominids have been around for 4 million years. So even less than 0.1%.
Right.
And as Byron Reese said on episode 11, this one really made me laugh out loud. He was like, all of us today came from the Homo sapiens who ran when they saw the bear versus the optimists who were like, oh, it's probably not a bear, right? And they got eaten by the bear.
Right.
And so, we have these highly developed fear centers that are constantly being, jacked up by the dystopia pushed to us by social media, by the media, by the food companies, as we covered in episode 3 with Jason Karp, and all this toxicity, mental, physical toxicity entering our system to keep us addicted and really hijacked our and leverage our basest instincts. And that really is the definition of putting profits over people. And that's why I've been involved in the conscious capitalism movement for so long. That's why I chose Do More Good as the publisher for my third book, which is called Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. And, I had Jay Wilkinson on for episode 41, who is the founder of that movement. And we're having the conference on May 27th through 29th in Omaha, which is going to be fantastic. The theme they picked this year, which is really cool, is Love Conquers Fear, Together We Rise.
Wow.
And
beautiful.
I think you've seen what the cover of my book is going to be, but it really fits with that well.
It's gorgeous.
And so, we have to transcend this scarcity and fear-based mindset and deprogram and reprogram in a love-centered approach. And that is what it means to walk a spiritual path. And I was in some discussions earlier this week, and one of my friends, who's a spiritual leader, he's part of the clergy for a religion. He said, well, hold on, does that mean when you say deprogram and reprogram, do you mean that that means deprogramming from ritual, like religious rituals? And I said, not necessarily. It means analyzing very deeply, through meditation and other means, like, am I doing this because it's really part of my soul and something that I really, truly love? Or am I just doing it as kind of like a robot, because my parents did it before or whatever else? And, as you reprogram and you say, this serves me versus that didn't, there's lots of things that you're going to keep. It's not like you're going to lose your identity. I mean, one of the funny things that happened in India the first time I went there is I was talking with friends in YPO that are successful there. I've been in YPO for like 17 years. And I was telling them about Vedanta and how much I loved studying Vedanta with Swamiji Parthasarathi, who eventually I brought to the U.S. for a YPO event, really opened up a lot of people's eyes, and I think it ended up helping a lot of people. I worked with a great YPO partner on that, and they said, "Oh, well, is that the thing where you're just going to go up and meditate? Like that's a bad thing," and it was this attachment to, it was fear basically of like, well, if I do that, then I'm not going to be a capitalist. And I want to make the point that, like, you're extraordinarily successful to this day. It's and I very much invest in companies. I do it from a very heart-centered approach. The number one thing Deborah and I are asking ourselves right now is this truly going to get humanity to abundance? Right. That's leading with the heart in terms of making that decision. But it's like they were in India, I really couldn't believe it, but then it makes sense if you just kind of look around in America too, that they were afraid to even try to study Vedanta because, oh no, that's just going to mean, and part of it is the illusion that gets imprinted if you're not aware of going to a place like the Vedanta Academy, and you're seeing a lot of people there that really are just fully in it and want to be there, but that's because they're the teacher persona.
Right.
They're meant to do that. Like that is their soul song.
Right.
You know, I know that my soul song is to create a better world through technology. Well, a very good vehicle to do that with is capitalism, you know, investing in companies, starting companies. And that's been my life arc. You know, I'm on this journey with Love Conquers Fear because this is really the meta thematic of my entire career. I think, frankly, you know, everything that came before was to get me to this point where I had the ability to do this at the most important time for humanity's inflection point. And I've actually seen this through psychedelic journeys, that I incarnated for this purpose to be able to help with the transition as humanity endeavored to allow love to conquer fear. And I really love that, you know, you're on that journey too, you know, with all the things you do. On consciousness, I know that you really love the book, The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli, like I do. And boy, that is amazing, you know, in terms of Benedict Cumberbatch reading that on Audible. It's just like smooth as silk. And what is your perspective on time as it relates to this universe, consciousness, and, you know, the experiences you've had?
So this is definitely one of my passions, one of my jams, and one of, I believe, the easiest to identify low-hanging fruits for people to begin the process of transitioning out of what some of us refer to as the matrix and what we call time in the earth experience. And I like to offer a very simple visual analogy to set the tone. We can easily visualize a cube in 3 dimensions. If we squish the cube, we get a 2-dimensional plane. If we squish the plane, we get a 1-dimensional line. If we squish the line, we get a 0-dimensional point. So we've gone from 3 to 2 to 1 to 0 dimensions. Time in our experience on Earth is in a line, linear, and unidirectional. It only moves in one direction forward. So we have prohibited and limited with our own construct of it being able to go backwards, and the ability for it to live in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions or n dimensions. And the reason I give this thought experiment is, for a lot of us, think of how much in our human experience is built off of linear time. Things like cause and effect. Almost every structure we have is built on past, present, and future. For us to even begin the unraveling of that process requires us to erase almost everything of our human experience in a given lifetime. So I like giving voice to this because when we open up to altered states and experiences, as we talked about in our own journeys, it begins the possibility to transcend time on a line. And I strongly believe as we begin this process to realize the infinite potential of our species in whatever way and shape we want to refer to it, the age of abundance, the ascension, I believe beginning the awareness and the process of transcending the shackles and confines of linear time is materially related for us as a species to begin the journey to realize our deepest, truest, fullest potential.
In terms of experiences you've had, like I've had experiences in both journeys and meditation where it showed me how illusory time is.
Yeah.
Are there any that you want to share here?
I mean, this simple
just
ones.
To put a real example.
I think the easiest way to describe it for people is, like Mark Gober refers to these as anomalies in his first book and then to Upside Down Thinking. And the official word is things like precognition, where you may have a vision and in linear time that may be referred to as a future experience. But in my direct primary experience, it's, is it real? Is it present? Have I had it already? So I'm implying that the blurring of whether I am reliving a childhood memory in a meditation or in a dream state, I'm having an experience that feels real, but I can't tell if it's already happened or not because I'm applying the construct of past and future on it. My point is, if we open up to the blurring of past and future, an experience can be parallel. And some people refer to this as parallel universes and parallel timelines. And we typically have difficulty fathoming that we can have many things going on at the same time and that the past and the future are simultaneous. I mean, these are very hard concepts to come to grips with. But the moment we start having visions of the future that come true or memories of the past that feel like today, then we start realizing that maybe there's a little bit of a blurriness between past, present, and future. And maybe that dream I had already happened, will happen, doesn't matter. It's happening all at the same time. So it all comes back to the present.
Yeah. Eben Alexander explained this really well on the last episode, and he explains it really well in his one of his books, the first book, Proof of Heaven. That what he saw in heaven or source or whatever you'd like to call that, which is rooted deeply in love, that he saw that, it's all collapsed. It's past, present, future, it's all there. And the time as a construct, the way that Carlo Rovelli really spells it out in The Order of Time, in that it's the measurement of interactions between things, chemicals, objects, etc. And this construct that we've created to make sense of those interactions, that is completely an illusion in source.
And Michael Newton, Journey of Souls, beautiful example of when we leave our bodies through all those past life regressions he outlined of the same thing, that we move beyond linear time and we're in a boundless experience in our light forms as souls out of a body.
And it makes sense that the ego would do that to let us walk about in this world with some sense of linearity. I mean, our souls are these infinite, divine, sparks or, light. Like we know that we're all light and energy at the quantum level, and and all spiritual text as well, and so in the physical space, in the world of form, especially as the soul is endeavoring to grow from lifetime to lifetime, and suffering's a teacher. I mean, there's lots of things that happen in the world of form to get you to grow from lifetime to lifetime, that there would be a construct that is kind of like allows for some measurability. But the beautiful thing about, going into a journey or going into a meditation and seeing it be illusory is that it starts to show you like, actually, the reality behind the veil is very, very different. And that, this is just part of the school. And it's super fascinating. I mean, when Carlo Rovelli wrote that book, I don't think he was endeavoring to write a book that was spiritual. I think he was just writing a book that was really rooted in science, but it ends in a very spiritual way. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book. I'm curious, like I've sometimes gotten these concerned friends, people have been friends for a long time, that are like, Brett, what's happening? Like, you're like this, capitalist and this entrepreneur and, still am. And you're being so transparent, like, are you going to lose friends? I mean, are you losing friends? And the funny thing about that is that I've actually gained a lot more friends than I would have ever expected, people can feel your energy and authenticity, and whether or not you are grounded, and that is an attractive characteristic, to mutually, right? I mean, it's part of the reason you and I have been so attracted to each other as soul brothers. And, it's gotten a lot of people to be also very authentic and transparent with me. I mean, as I've said a few times, I said this on the Evan Alexander episode too, I've had 11 friends open up to me about their near-death experiences. Before 2025, 0 friends open up. And I thought, that I was a pretty safe guy to share things with. And I think I was, but they didn't feel safe because I didn't create an opening in a container that would make them feel like I would be open to something that's quote unquote that woo. And it's the most transcendent experience of their life. And I'm just kind of curious for you as you've walked this path of being, so successful, checking the boxes, and then, having that real awakening and going into the second, act. If you've, have you kind of dealt with that with friends that are like, Niraj, are you okay?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up, Brett. This has actually been non-trivial to witness and experience and live over the last several years. And I'd say at the beginning of the journey, it was a lot harder when I felt like I had a fork in the road between friends of mine for 20 years that didn't really want to explore spirituality, truth, and consciousness, and me kind of getting pulled deeper and further into this. And it did have some tension. And at the time, I thought it was just me, and I didn't really have any other friends going through it I could talk to about it, or that I felt were in it. And over time, that became more common. And so it was actually very difficult in the beginning to lose relationships or long-term friends, transitioning out of an 11-year marriage with kindness and love and grace, and even professional tensions with people that were less aligned. But over that first series of transitions, the next waves became a lot more easier over time. And I eventually ended up creating this little mental model about this in chatting about it with friends, as today you and I are very driven by doing our best that we can with our God-given resources and skills and abilities to help the global project or process of our species journey right now. And if you will, imagine an upside down pyramid or triangle. And at the top, I would call it asleep. And again, part of the reference here implicit is Ken Wilber's wake up, clean up, grow up, and show up process. So
he's author of so many books.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful frame, because waking up, many people are focused on, but it's only the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's not the end point, and that's why I've referenced it. So at the top, let's call it asleep, and people who don't frankly care about seeking for truth or spirituality or consciousness, which today may be the majority of the 8 billion. And then the next step down, I would refer to it as casual or recreational seekers of truth. And that could look like, oh, I'm going to take a yoga class, or may I try this 10-minute app meditation, but just something, just a little bit, dipping our toes in the water. Mm-hmm. And the next step down, I would refer to as a very serious, very deeply committed seeker of truth. And that could look like traveling around the world and trying different modalities and lineages and teachers, and some people even decades of trying different things to really commit to their soul's potential. And then the next step down, which are people who are starting to realize shifts in consciousness. And he coined this term persistent non-symbolic experience, but he's saying, through a series of locations, people can start experiencing these shifts. But as you pointed out, they can be very disruptive to one's life, personally, family, business, professionally. And it's not an overnight process. And for some people, it can take many years to integrate and successfully weave those newfound realizations and soul journeys and experiences into one's world. Family, friends, kids, work, business, all of that. And he's saying once you get through the other side, then that's what he calls an explorer. And to me, I'm just using this nomenclature to be a placeholder. But answering your question, the question that I love asking, and I've had many beautiful conversations with folks who have been on the journey and are deeply committed to the global realization, is where is it most effective for us to focus our energies and our resources? And, where I've landed going up and down this triangle is it's not an or, it's an and. We need opportunities and content at the very top of the funnel to make it interesting for people to want to dip their toes in the water and meet people where they're at, whether it's like mainstream entertainment, whether it's on the same level of a docuseries or a reality TV show, but to make it cool and interesting and say, wow, maybe I do want to become a seeker. And then for those of us that have started experiencing, to help our friends and brothers and sisters who are choosing to start on their journeys, and for us to basically pay it forward to older versions of ourselves, which is how I have finally come to grips with this, is not judging people where they're at and meeting them, but having compassion for, frankly, older versions of ourselves and saying, oh my gosh, that reminds me of me where I was, and I can help an older version of me along. But I think there's opportunities for each of these with the idea that it just takes one Jesus, Krishna, Buddha to really tip the entire world potentially. So it's a very challenging issue that I don't have a strong view on, and I actually see both sides of quantity versus quality. I do believe you and I are committed to, as you refer, abundance for all, that without leaving any soul behind, including, as you point out, Chad and all these other under-resourced, underprivileged areas. But do we start at the top? Do we start at the bottom? And I think we're at a stage where we're going to do it all at the same time. Right.
And I actually think that that's the right way to do it. I mean, it was that same episode with Byron Reese where he really challenged me, episode 11, to say, well, Brett, because he asked me, like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the actual, like, what do you want to happen is what he said. Not why are you doing this, but he asked me, what do you really want to happen here? And I said, well, I want the, top 2,000 leaders to really have a heart shift. And he said, well, that's not really the way history works, right? The way history works is it's a lot of individuals doing acts of kindness. And he was so right in that. And I think really love conquers fear is both bottoms up and tops down. It's us getting to a point where through the technology acceleration of AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain-computer interfaces, this is pronounced, exponential of exponentials, where humanity has never prioritized anything like this before. I mean, the amount of money, energy, time. And that we're going to be able to see abundance. It's like we're going to be able to glimpse it. And that's going to be the really important choice for us to make on, do we want to choose to create planetary abundance for all? And I would include for all, also to include, our biome, our planetary biome, the plants, the animals, I'm, you're probably like this too, but and it's maybe this is a embarrassing thing to say, although it's not embarrassing to me. But I won't even step on an ant. I see this, I'll walk out the way, because there's no reason to try to inflict harm on anything else, and to have compassion and love for all these amazing things. I mean, just witnessing a beautiful sunset, the night that you came over and, we're having dinner with Evan Alexander, the sunset that night was beautiful. I don't know if you've seen the email yet for the group, but I shared it. It was proof of heaven moment right there, just witnessing beauty. You know, Patrick Gentempo talked about that on episode 25, that he said his definition of love is the witnessing of beauty. I told Evan that, and he just loved it. And I just love that, because beauty is all around us. I mean, this cosmic, place that we're in, this Earth school, yeah, there's bad things happening, but there is beauty everywhere if you just look for it and realize it.
Right.
And there's lots of stuff that we have to transcend. And I'm curious, like, how you view this, humanity, as I've said, making it. And I've said I'm 95% certain we make it. And I've outlined the risk. And in my book, chapter 11 is really outlining what the risks are and why you should believe that we can make it. And I end the book with case studies of why you should believe as well. I'm just curious, how do you view it? How do you view us making it? I mean, you're very rooted as a technology investor. You're on the front lines of seeing what's possible with AI, et cetera. How do you view us making it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful frame, and it's very nuanced in my perspective and experience here, because to me, what's underneath the question is how we want. If you believe in the natural law, that which we put out is that what we attract. And one of the reasons I'm here in supporting you is I very much believe we can create a new reality, starting with ourselves and projecting what we want in the world. Like the saying, be the change you want to be in the world. And I think love is the root of the roots in showing up not only with an open heart and putting out kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and love to attract the same. So with having said that, I believe that's materially linked to our commitment to consciousness. But the consciousness starts with ourselves. And once we work on our own healing journeys and our consciousness, it can then magnify and ripple out. But we start with ourselves first. And now, using that as a backdrop and a frame, I believe, as you pointed out, these incredible tech innovations that we're witnessing in recent years and that are amongst us today, to me, are leverage on leverage on leverage, and are simply magnifiers of everything that we ever thought was possible we could do. And what I like to say is, just like the outlet in the wall doesn't really care what you plug into it, it'll give. To me, AI is the extreme manifestation of that. It will only be as good with our intentionality and our consciousness. So if we are less evolved, AI will reflect times 100,000 our intention, and we can easily play out both sides. And to me, it's a gift, giving us an opportunity to not only work on ourselves, but to quickly accelerate our own consciousness journeys to shift AI's impact for more unity, more connection, more healing, more love, in a world where there will be as much challenge on the other side of that. And it may be an opportunity for me to share the mission statement for Kilowatt, because it's tinily linked in, because up until a couple of years ago, people say, hey, what do you do? What do you invest in? And for the longest time, I would share, hey, we're here to invest in, to create the world that we want for ourselves, loved ones, future generations, which has been absolutely true, but it felt like it was a bit amorphous in general. And then it was only last year when I really went inward. I'm like, no, what is it that we really stand for and believe in? And I was able to really distill this into a sentence, which is, and Kilowatt, by the way, is just my own family office. Like, you're an investor, I'm an investor, and now a small boutique. We have a small number of outside families when I was convinced a decade ago to come out of retirement. And it's to expand resources by nurturing connection to realize collective consciousness. I'm going to explain each of those three. Expand resources is very straightforward. We generate $1 of profit when our investors have at least 4. And to me, the investor contract is one of the most sacred contracts that is changed my life and given me more than I could have ever imagined. And I hold it so near and dear that when people entrust you with their intention, their source energy, their trust, their capital, to me, not only do I safeguard it as my own, to me, I treat it as the ultimate act of devotion. And so for me, it's very sacred. So that's number one. Number two, nurture connection. This means create new connection, repair lost connection, deepen existing connection. What kind of connection? 4 kinds. Connection to self, connection to others, connection to nature, and connection to the divine. All. And realize collective consciousness is that what unifies and binds us is far greater than what's perceived to separate and divide us. So for me, I'm committed in my soul, life purpose and journey to accelerate the path to get there. And to now answer your question with that about AI, I believe in only with the caveat of the consciousness. Now that consciousness is the creators of it, the users of it, the amplifiers of it, and we basically have an extra set of imperative around us to really go deeper and faster to help everyone around us improve their consciousness. And I believe, like you, I am an optimist, and I am a pathological optimist, as some might say, because if we really are here to create the reality that we want, why would we want anything else? And it starts with our belief systems, then our thoughts and emotions, and then our words and actions. But we can't build if our belief system is faulty. And if our belief system is fearing extinction or fearing like death, leaving a body, which I think is no different than leaving a rental car. It's taken me many years, and I don't worry about leaving my body anymore. If it happens tomorrow or decades from now, do you cry when you return your rental car? Do you wonder when you're going to die? Well, no, you return your rental car. And I know this is a bit out there, but to me, I have decided when my soul took this commitment, this lifetime, you and I both chose to be here at this time, which is an incredibly opportune time to have an impact in an outsized way on this beloved planet and all of our brothers and sisters, is to make sure we are embodying the living example, leading from the heart, showing unity without fear. And for me, overcoming fear is fear of death, fear of extinction, fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of rejection, fear of what people are going to think and say to you that thought you were this, and now you and I are saying something different than what they thought we were. But it's overcoming these fears when we can show up as ourselves, our authentic selves, but in physics, the term is called resonance. And just to geek out for a second, the mathematical term of resonance is a high amplitude signal where we crest at the peak at called omega naught, which is the natural frequency. And when you drive at the natural frequency, you get the highest amplitude signal. So when you and I show up personally and professionally and with our loved ones and our families in our most authentic self, we are vibrating at the natural frequency, creating resonance. So the science of this is really clear, is when we put out that natural frequency, we attract that same back, hence the resonance, hence transcending win-loss, heads, tails, because there's no way we can lose.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the outcome is, because we are being true, we're honoring our souls in complete depth, and we let go of the outcome, we give it to the divine.
Yeah. And, I would actually say that that's another great definition of love. You know, being in this beautiful musical city, and I've told you, please fly into Austin sometime when there's a Austin City Limits music TV taping. That's one of the favorite things that Deborah and I do here. It's been going for 52 years, longest running music TV show. But I was watching John Batiste here.
I've heard him.
Oh my gosh.
He's amazing.
He is absolutely manifesting love.
Yeah.
And it's because he is in such alignment with what he is meant to do in this lifetime. You can feel authenticity. And music and art is a very pronounced way to feel it. But capitalism too is artistry. We can all be artists in our field, and when you lead with love, it's really hard to lose.
Totally.
It is extremely attractive. I have the love that I have in my heart, in large part to my mom, who really put it in, at a very young age, unconditionally loved me, since age 7, introduced me to my computer and learned how to program with me, and then kept everybody out of my way. Said, he's in alignment. This is what he's meant to do. He's passionate. And that was a true gift for her to realize that and allow me to be, authentic. And, when you see that in anyone, it's super attractive. And so getting back to the upside down pyramid which you've outlined, what type of friends do you want to attract?
Yeah.
Do you want to attract friends that are only friends because you have some nice material item that it's a status thing? Or do you want to attract friends that are there because they're in alignment with your soul's mission, because their soul is in alignment with your soul in this field of consciousness, in this fundamental, aspect of the universe?
Right.
And that's a really important way to think about walking in the world.
The way I describe that is when you and I were 4 years old, we were present, we were in the moment, we were activated, we weren't attached to too much in the external. And the way I describe in the decades since then is we started becoming under the influence of a series of different constituents, starting with our parents, our teachers, our best friends and classmates and boyfriend, girlfriend, boss, coworker, employees, investors, spouse, children. But through all of those people that we dig into, we crave love, acceptance, and money and sex and all those attachments to those things from all those people. It leads us to focus on the receipt of those items from all those people. But the reason I'm outlining that is from that natural frequency, we start shifting away by thinking we need to get all those things from all those people to get fulfilled, or the A through G life happiness formula. And then by putting out that inauthentic energy, we attract the same inauthentic energy back, causing a negative feedback loop.
Right.
So the beauty of this process is by unraveling and unwinding that in our truth-seeking journeys, we start getting back to that inner 4-year-old and play and resonance. And now we can go back to who we were, what we were all along, and not put out inauthentic energy. Right. And afraid of what may come back or not come back, because heads we win and tails we win. There's no way you can lose.
That's right. Yeah. And one of the things I just want to double click on, because I want to give the translation to what you said. Eben was asked last night, I hosted him in the Jewish community, and he was asked last night by the audience, are you afraid of death after your experience? And he was like, not at all. But it's different than having a death wish. Like, it means that he has seen beyond the veil, and has actually seen how much this lifetime matters to grow his soul. And, you and I are both operating from that place. I mean, I can say this about you for sure, that you're operating at your highest frequency in this lifetime. And how do you view your personal role in terms of us making it to abundance for all?
Thank you. And it hasn't been an easy process, but as I pointed out, 8 years ago, it started with me writing this one-page manifesto of senses. I'll distill that into 8 words. Which was a few years later, which is my soul's purpose this lifetime is to realize collective consciousness and bring truth into earth. Mm-hmm. What does that
so
mean?
Much.
And that actually came to me, and I etched it into an important piece that has been a huge aspect of my guiding in this focus point. But practically, to answer your question today, I divide my energy across a few sides of a pyramid, is the way I visualize it. The first is this effortless meditation and global community called Siddha Maha Yoga, which you have experienced in December, and in May you're going to experience in person in Bali.
Mm-hmm. You know, you asked me a few weeks before my book was due to start the editing process, meaning that all the chapters were written, if I wanted to be in an online retreat. And the ego immediately reacted of don't even think about it, right? But the heart was like an emphatic yes, and my soul really lit up. I can feel I can feel the energy. It's like my whole body lights up. And I knew that it was a yes. So I cleared the deck where it was just that was what I was going to do, this online retreat with Guruji. We'll talk about him, as well as finish the book. And I got to tell you, your fingerprints through introducing me to this are not just because of our friendship, which is amazing, but they're on the book now. You're in the book, and it made the end of the book so much better. It just really, it put me in a state of flow. Yeah. And it really shows you how, we've been doing meditations in person in this room, actually, every morning together, but it showed you how even physically apart, which makes sense because we're all in this one field of consciousness, how you still, when you're meditating together, you can feel it. You can feel the energy. And I had such transcendent meditations, and then boom, going back into the book, and it just made more heart come out. So I want to thank you for that, because this is really a gift.
You are most welcome. And I hinted about this earlier, and credit to your soul and your heart for saying yes to that, to call it in. And as I said earlier, this was not something I was thinking I was ready for or seeking. And it was almost 8 years ago in May of 2018 when I was at a gathering in Mexico. And up until that point, I think I'd meditated a total of 20, 30 minutes combined my entire life. Right. I'd meditated 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. I tried an app. None of it stuck. None of it felt comfortable or natural. And I basically assumed meditation was not for me. I was caught up in the world of form and father and investor and Burning Man camp guy. And I said,
Yeah.
So I was checked out.
Mm-hmm.
And at this gathering, a dear brother, Jack Herrick, invited me and said, hey, you're ever going to meditate in this room? And long story short, we were in this room with a dozen friends, and we were welcomed into this ancient lineage called Siddha Maha Yoga. I had no idea what any of this was, and I wasn't on a spiritual quest for meditation and a community,
right.
But we were told we were going to meditate for an hour, and I said, oh my gosh, I was not happy. Right. I was not happy.
This is 3x my whole lifetime of meditation.
Exactly. I was literally giving Jack the evil eye, and I was like, what did you get me into? Right. At any event, we got in, but they said, okay, no suffering, no pain. If you want to extend your legs to tangles, you want to lie down, all right, fine, I can do with all this. So we sat for an hour. I laid down for over half of it. And at the end, I didn't really feel anything, and my life didn't shift. But Jack did, as we found out, in a very small majority, and he had to leave the next day. He basically said, look, Niraj, this is real. Stick with this. I'm telling you, this Guruji guy is legit. And so I did a couple more. Nothing crazy happened. Event ended. A couple months later, we're in Bali. I do it 2 hours, 1 hour, twice a day. For 10 days, still don't experience any wild, crazy shifts. But afterwards, a few friends came up to me when I came home and said, hey, man, you seem happier and calmer. What are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's this meditation thing working. And with a couple of those reflections, I committed to it daily, July 18. And since then, it's been a life-changing aspect. My relationships improved, my health improved, my productivity, my insights, my clarity, my peace. And so within a year after seeing this, we decided this is the best thing we've ever imagined. We need to share it with our close friends. However, we could only get the spiritual master from India a week or two a year. And it was really hard to figure out which of your 15 or 20 friends you could host in your home for 4 days. It was really hard. We were swapping favorites with each other. Our third buddy, Naval Ravikant, we took turns hosting the Siddha Master. And in the end, we realized this was having impact, and it was amazing. Fast forward, it's March 2020. Everyone is in lockdown and can't travel, and the Siddha Master can't come. We come up with the idea to bring it online in Zoom. And it started out with 18 of our friends in April 2020. And not only did it work, in many cases, it worked even better, because you don't go to some beautiful faraway destination and come home trying to integrate it and then it goes away. It was integrated day one. And so people had shifts, and then it took off. And we did 6 in 2020, 6 in 21, a handful in 22. And within a few of these, not only did it go to friends and friends of friends and volunteers, and today just our little group has grown to over 3,000 people, 150 volunteers, 92 countries, and it's just a pure labor of love. No profit, no nonprofit, all volunteer driven. The website is justenjoy.live, and we welcome people every Tuesday, Thursday. We do a couple Zoom online, but we have in-person retreats all over the world. India, Australia, Bali. June, July is Europe. May is Bali. April is mostly Western Perth, Australia. August this year will be Mexico and Argentina. September, October is Brazil. November, likely Bali, but New Zealand. And then December, January, India, and February, Himalayas. So in-person offerings all over the world. Zoom offerings at least once or twice a year, but weekly onboardings every Tuesday and Thursday. And the only three things we ask of anyone who wants to come in and explore is, number one, natural curiosity for truth. 2, honesty with yourself first before others. And 3, a daily commitment to try something new. And we really only ask an hour a day, 30 days, just to give your soul a chance. But that has radically changed my life. It has been one of the greatest gifts to share with the world. And most of my best friends have come through these communities, like my soulist relationships. My dear beloved has come through this. Almost every close relationship in my life, I can tie into this. So that's the first side of the pyramid.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really cool about it is that Guruji, is part of the consciousness awakening and us getting to this age of abundance for all. And can you tell the story about how he decided to open this up and what the lineage of it is?
Oh, wow.
Because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, this usually doesn't make it out, but I'm happy to. It gets a little bit magical and mystical.
Yeah.
So as I got deeper into this, of course, I wanted to learn a lot more, and I was very privileged in the pre-internet era, before things really took off, to have a lot of one-on-one time with him in person, to really go very deep and asking lots of these questions. Mm-hmm. And we have hundreds, by the way, of these satsangs or Q&A sessions recorded.
Yeah.
And are all available within our community for free within our archive. So number one, the lineage, we trace back 10 generations verbally, but even before that, many, many centuries. And for the longest time, this lineage of really pure enlightened Siddha Masters, only one of these initiations or blessings, which is just a wish that your soul become realized this lifetime, was given in a whole lifetime of a Siddha Master in body to basically the next in line to carry it. That was the way it was passed generation after generation after generation, very quietly, very secretly, in the shadows, with entire purity and integrity, because you could argue they knew that this was needing to be preserved whenever the world was going to be ready for it, and the world was going to need it. And so that was, for many generations, centuries, in fact, until 2 generations ago, Guruji's master's master, Vishnu Tirthi Maharaj, he basically started giving out a few other blessings, initiations, to basically expand the nodes of the family tree beyond just the next lineage holder. And current lineage holder, again, he's been a monk since he was a young teenage boy. So he's been doing this over 52 years in serving humanity. And his master, Shivam Tertsi Maharaj, he basically gave out dozens plus and wrote a number of books, but again, not to anyone. But that was his guidance and instructions. And then Guruji, who got initiated at a very young age, was also in altered states in reality for a long time, but it was really around the turn of the century, millennium, where he was basically guided by the lineage and said, hey, this is what we've been waiting for all this time. It's time for you to get back in human form and to really get to work and start giving these down. That was about 20 plus years ago.
Right.
So originally for a decade plus, this was given out a dozen, 24 people at a time in very intentional settings, like at ashrams in person to look after them. And then only since we got involved did it start scaling broadly and growing. But we have collectives all over the world, literally Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, in South America, most countries in Europe, India, of course, a great group in United States, a great group in Bali, physical clusters of people, Sebastopol, Northern California, truly all over the world spreading. But yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love it. And it actually reminds me of when Chris Page said, in times where it's really needed, God sends in the best troops, and here Guruji is incarnated for this purpose. But also, you and Jack, and Naval, like realizing, hey, this is something that we can bring to people, and you really do that very selflessly. I want to emphasize that this is not a for-profit motive at all. I know you do a lot more than this, and I want to make sure to cover the comprehensiveness of how embodied you are in terms of helping us make it to the age of abundance for all, because it's beautiful, like the breadth of what you do.
Thank you. And it honestly, I think, required me to disconnect as much as I did the last handful of years to really push a lot of these projects, which, being a founder, you kind of have to put your head down to get from 0 to 1 before you start engaging with the world. Yeah. And I needed that space for a while. So that's side 1 of the pyramid, Siddha Maha Yoga. Side 2, we already covered, which is Kilowatt Capital. Yeah. And that was my own family office starting in 2010, was basically convinced to come out of retirement. So we have a small little boutique seed stage fund investing in mission line entrepreneurs, very much like you and Deborah do, but have been doing it very quietly, off the radar. But that is ongoing, and we'll be becoming a bit more active in that this year, but we haven't been that active because I've been focused elsewhere. That's side 2 of the pyramid. Side 3 of the pyramid, which the world doesn't yet fully know about, so this may be one of the first introductions to it because it's not yet fully unveiled. This is a sneak preview, is Coongie Research Institute, CRI for short. This is a nonprofit research institute that I founded 7 years ago in 2019, set physically in Boulder Creek, California, which is an hour and a half southwest of San Francisco in the Santa Cruz Mountains and Hills. Today it's on 53 acres. It's a research institute for the advancement of all life through the 3 corners of science, spirituality, and nature symbiosis. Coongie is an acronym. It stands for Consciously Originating Our Infinite Global Interventions and Endeavors. And those 3 corners are science, where we're mostly focused on etheric physics. And to be very precise, as you talked about and we discussed over dinner with Eben, many of us see physics, whether it be talking about quantum, as really the fundamental building block on which we can understand how to build our reality, because many things are built, whether it's our chemistry and biology and psychology, all starting with physics. And very much like in Mark Gober's work, we believe that our physics, unfortunately, has suffered what I would call an intermission, or really a period of stagnation for most of the last century in not being able to really fulfill its potential. We had a lot of beautiful things come out over the years, and without getting into the gory story from the ancient Greeks and Vedics, we've had a series of forks over the way. And as you beautifully refer to, many of us now call it scientism because, as you said, give us the miracle of the Big Bang. We'll give you everything else. And so what's the difference between that and religion? And I also subscribe to that view, is that modern science, as we refer to it, or materialism that we have inherited, unfortunately has a lot of limitations. So what we are focused on is creating a safe haven to not only bridge this divide, to create post-materialism opportunities to study non-physical phenomena, not relying on government funding, not relying on corporate funding, not relying on university oversight, because that is the bulk. There's $2.9 trillion today that funds global R&D. 60% of that comes almost equally in the US and China. And almost all of that, because there's 8 billion of us, and not many people are going to disagree that our future potential as a species is a function of our R&D. And about 0.1% of 8 billion people are about 9 million career scientists who do it full-time, investigating researchers. So 0.1% is responsible for 99.9% of the rest of our future. And that money comes from a small number of sources. And the moment that money decides it's not suitable, it won't get funded. And we suffer, everyone suffers, including the Ugandan farmer, because of those decisions from a small number of people, from a small number of entities that fund the mainstream science. So our opportunity is to be an example of alternate funding to do non-mainstream research with true bona fide research investigators and scientists focused on alternate examples of physics of non-physical phenomena. The name of our lab will be Consciousness, Energy, and Life Systems, including many things. So that's corner one. Corner two, we've already talked about, which is spirituality, which is offering opportunities of awakening for those ready. We are deeply devoted to committing to Siddha Maha Yoga and maybe other things in the future, like darkroom retreats. We are very pure in the way we hold the space land, so we're not on site supporting plant medicines or even allow things like alcohol or meat. We're very much in the same vibration as you and me and our lifestyle choices, and we hold the land the exact same way as a 1,300-year-old temple in India. And we make sure anyone who sets foot is going to honor those guidelines that we have. And then the third corner is nature symbiosis, which is how to eat and live chemical free. Before the Industrial Revolution, we lived in a world that was more pure in our buildings that were not toxic and killing us, and in our food, which has been compromised through our soil and through toxins and many other things that are well discussed and talked about. So for us, what we do is natural, organic, permaculture-based regenerative farming to really show how we take care of the land through really deep mineral-rich soil, and to let the land take care of us organically, which there are many places to do that, and natural building, which is its own art, where no chemicals, no toxins, and we can show by example what it means to live in natural building, whether it's clay and straw and timber, but truly beautiful works of art that are functional in today's world, which is its own art form. And there aren't many people who are actually aware of what it means, but we have to redefine all of current structures. So today, to distill, there are thousands of places in the world you can go to learn about natural building and regenerative farming and permaculture-based principles. There are probably tens of thousands of places in the world you can go to learn and have a spiritual experience and learn meditation and yoga. And I may be off on these numbers, but there, by my count, are less than 10 places in the world that I know today, at least, where you could do truly bona fide, independently funded research free of government, free of corporate, free of university, like IONS. And we, by my experience, are the only one that I know where you can do all three, because these feed off of each other. And that is what's unique to CRI. In the next few months, we will be sharing more about our journey. Right now, The website is coongie.org. We just have a short video, but we will be unveiling a lot more of who we are and what we're doing. But that's side 3 of the pyramid. So there's the for-profit side, Kilowatt Capital, CRI, which is the nonprofit side, Siddha Maha Yoga, which is the volunteer side. And of course, I am a very deeply devoted father like you, to 2 boys, 12 and 15. And the last side, which I would invite you to introduce, is something that a lot of people know me for, is life story exchange.
Yeah, so life story. What a process. You know, I've told so many people about your process for really going deep and getting to know people, because it's really completely unique. I mean, you know, I just celebrated my 54th birthday on Valentine's Day.
Congratulations.
And I can tell you that out of everybody I've known in my 54 years, in this lifetime, I have never gone through a process like that. YPO has something called the timeline, where you present for like 45 minutes and people can ask questions for around 15. And it's useful, and it does allow you to get to know someone's life arc. But 45 minutes is very different than the Niraj version. Niraj version is, and I gotta say, at first, like, I was like, holy moly, like, this is going to be a lot of time. Again, the ego was like, oh, whoa. But the heart was a big yes. And it was really pretty amazing to go that deep. And why don't you describe it? But I just, it's incredible, because some of my you know, friends that have been friends for 10 to 20 years, I don't know as much about them as I know about you.
Yeah.
And vice versa, you know.
Totally.
Well, maybe you've done that with a lot of people, but it's like, but the vice versa is like, before you invented this life story.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. It's about 2014. I come back from my very first Burning Man. I went to 4 in a row. And as I explained my pendulum swing of my seeking journey, this was really at the beginning of that. And like a lot of people who have these powerful experiences in their first burn, I was really depressed for about 3 weeks, where I came back and I couldn't reconcile seeing homeless people on the street and then experiencing all this incredible love and abundance. And we can argue about Burning Man being reality or not, when 70,000 people who are very resourced with stuff for 200,000 are taking care of whether or not it can scale to 7 or 8 billion. But independent of that, I had the experience of just this life-changing week. And then I'm in downtown San Francisco and I'm just seeing no one's making eye contact. No one cares about each other. And it was really depressing. So I'm doing business meetings. And just like you and I can relate to in most business meetings, and I'm in a downtown high-rise financial district office, you start out a business meeting with, hey, how do you know such and such? So you establish some common ground. What do you do? What do I do? You do 1 to 2 minute spiel, and then you talk about the thing. That's how it goes. And I was so not wanting that. I said, hold on. Tell me more about yourself. I don't just mean what you do. Tell me where you were born, where you grew up. Tell me about your family. And first people are caught off guard. And I said, no, I want to know more about you. And then before I knew it, I got people to open up. And before I knew it, it was the entire first meeting where we just shared about our life stories. And then within not too long, I started noticing some really cool things, where I started noticing more ease, more comfort, more openness. And what I realized after doing this, I said, wow, these relationships that I've started this way are going deeper, faster. They're more natural. They're more organic. And now I believe it's allowing the depth of the multidimensional human connection to take root first, free of any limitation. And before I realized it, everyone that I met one-on-one, I initiated this with. And over the years, this basically evolved and iterated into many experiments, like you and me having those tech founder, entrepreneurial experimenter roots. Like, you just try different things. And I love that little experimenting side of our shared DNA. And so I just said, all right, well, let's try it virtually. Let's try it asynchronously. Let's try it instead of half an hour, or let's try it one day walking in nature. So I tried short form, mid form, long form, in person, virtual. And you and I did a mixture of virtual, Zoom and asynchronous recordings. We did this hybrid. And what I realized a few things. These relationships were so much richer than anything I'd ever had, faster. Like you reflected, I knew people. And so the thesis originally behind this is, why can't I treat someone I've known for 20 minutes like I've known them for 20 years? But quality doesn't always beget quantity. And then it was, which I still hold in my heart today, that we have only begun to scratch the surface of the potential of human connection as a species, which is maybe controversial. But through my experience, I have gone deeper with people who are new and strangers, very much like you and me. One of the deepest connections I have remembered in years, even though I've done a number of these, because of the resonance, and I believe with the truth bumps of this not being our first time around this lifetime.
Yeah.
And through that remembrance and reconnection. So life story now has shifted, and I'll land this by saying that about 7 years ago, halfway through this journey, well, actually, let's say about 12 years is when I started, but about 6-7 years ago, I started sharing things more vulnerably about things that I was incredibly ashamed about, that were some of my deepest, darkest secrets that I thought I would take to, the end of this life with me. That through the safety of that container, things that I didn't even share with my former wife until halfway through marriage, that in the course of being able to share those things in this life story container and arc, I could see my own healing and self-forgiveness through some of that, giving me an opportunity to actually see my own healing, not just a connection tool. And so I said, wow, this isn't getting tired telling my own story a couple hundred times over the years. It's actually giving me a greater gift each time I do this. And then finally, because of the external reflections of you and many others that said, this is one of the most amazing things that I've ever had. Please share this with the others. Please give me something so I can do this with all those I love. And I always ask people in recent years, would you do this with someone you love? Do you want to do this with others? And give me feedback. And so originally I thought, because I have many things in my life purpose, as you now know, this was not 6 years ago a priority. It was just something that was kind of a side hobby. And then because many people are asking for it, I said, okay, maybe I'll just write a blog post and just give this open source to the world for free. But other people said, no. The people who need this the most are the ones who value human connection the most, who are hyper prioritizing human relationships, which are usually people in periods of high agency and leadership, and CEOs and leaders of government and investors and stewards of resource. And those people aren't going to value a blog post. And I said, oh, so what does that mean? I'm not a seminar kind of guy. And I was guided to write a book. And so I started that process. It's been on the shelf for a while, and I will be completing it later this year, and awesome. Now publicly saying this summer.
It's out there. You've declared your intention to the universe.
And it will be 1/3 the why this works, including the science, and 2/3, or maybe, who knows that ratio, how it'll change over time, the how to go out and do it.
Right.
And so that's where this is heading.
One of the things that I love about the way you unpack that is that you became more vulnerable as you went, which meant that you were on a journey of love, conquering your own fear.
Yes.
In the process. And when you project that in your life story, to me, it allowed me to also be more vulnerable with you.
Yes.
And how many friendships do you have, for anybody listening to this or watching this, where they truly can be completely and totally vulnerable? And if they don't have those, I would encourage them to do
Right.
this life story. And maybe just we should end, if you don't mind, with just the real quick version of how to do this, because
Sure.
how you've
Sure.
I know you're going to write this beautiful book about it, but it's very actually easy to describe. Like, if people want to do this with their friends right now.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. We can set up the basic framework. So number one is it has to be mutual opt-in. So the invitation can be, hey, do you want to get to know each other better? Hey, would you be open to stepping into a journey, a process? The invitation is critical step one of the process. And the invitation can look like, I want to get to know you better. It can be someone you've known for a long time. It could be someone you're just meeting. I call it pre-existing or new. It can be someone in friends or family or intimate or business, work or community. It can be any mixture of those or others, right? But based on whether it's someone you just have met or someone you've known for decades, the invitation may look a little different, right? Like, hey, I want to get to know you better, like your wife of 20 years, or someone that, say, you're going on a first date with. Hey, would you be open to getting to know each other better through this little container? So number one, I'd say an intentional invitation in whatever is applicable to that scenario or situation, and setting it up with a way, and we're like, I don't know, maybe. And then the next step is creating safety, which is absolutely essential and vital in setting up a groundwork and both agreeing and opting into a privacy component, which can be anything from this is only between us, this is only between us at this point in time, which means that even if we reference it with each other, again, we need to reference it. So there's a few levels of that, of privacy, but that leads to the safety. And then it can be short form, mid form, long form. Short form can be, I've done as little as 15 minutes each, which obviously is going to be a highlight reel and a table of contents, to a day or two, a full day, walking around a whole day. So know that there's a spectrum, right? But letting that guide, I think that's also essential. And then, of course, in-person, virtual Zoom, recordings, all these things. And so I think that's the basics. And then the final thing I'll say, the easiest way to go out and do it is really the chronological way, which I like to refer to it. And again, all this will be referenced later in the next year or so. Birth through high school is what I call, the childhood arc. And then there's coming of age, which is late teens, early 20s, college for some people, or university, grad schools. And this is getting out of your house, having your own imprint in life. And then usually the next arcs can look like our professional journeys, which are a huge part of our identities that many of us have taken on. It can look like, family. It can look like marriage and kids and parenthood. It can look like, for you and me, truth-seeking, spirituality, consciousness. It can look like many things. It can look like an intimacy journey. It can look like for us, like a journey with the feminine. It can look like a healing journey with traumas. There are many different possibilities of what these thematic constructs could be.
Yeah.
And some of those things come out of getting to know someone. So when you meet someone for the first time, it's, I think, essential to be open to adapt without projecting. But if someone you've known 20 years, you kind of know a lot about them already.
Right.
But I hope does that set it up?
Yeah, that sets it up. That sets it up extremely well. And, if people are wondering, like, wow, how would I be able to talk about myself? In our case, we did like an hour for each of these each.
Right.
And I think it was cumulative, like 10 hours of time.
Yeah.
And how am I going to be able to talk about, like, from birth to, to through high school for an hour? It's actually harder than you would think to even compress it to that.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot you can unpack in just that. So allowing yourself space to breathe and do this is really just beautiful. I can't wait for the book to come out. And wow, Niraj, I love your heart. You're such a brother, and thank you so much for all you do. And, just beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you, Brett.
Also,
thank you.
Best hugger too. Thanks again.
My pleasure, brother. I'm so honored to be here.
So thanks everybody again for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. By the time you see this, I'll have just been awarded by Tulane University the Entrepreneur of the Year. I was in shock that I was named this by the president of Tulane, Mike Fitz. Really look forward to celebrating that on March 10th. This episode will have come out, slightly after that. And the reason I'm sharing this is part of the reason I was in shock is that the whole project of Love Conquers Fear and making the very conscious decision to be as open as I've been on this podcast and in my book, was a journey for me of conquering my own fear in terms of transparency and operating from this place of authenticity. And I asked them at Tulane, I said, okay, I know you're a fan of Love Conquers Fear. The president of Tulane told me that, as well as others. But I said, I just want to emphasize, that I'm talking about all types of things that, would violate the rules of Ghostbusters, in terms of crossing the streams. There's discussion, deep discussion about spirituality. There's deep discussion about the nature of consciousness. There's a deep discussion about, capitalism and leadership. And usually, someone stays in a swim lane. So I just want you to think about that in terms of giving me this award. And I said that prior to accepting it. And their response was so beautiful. And it really exemplifies why our daughter Rachel loves Tulane so much. And she really does. She just absolutely loves it there. It was a triple major, is doing fantastic. And it's because what they said, look, New Orleans is rooted in authenticity, and Tulane is definitely rooted in authenticity. And we love the fact that you're rooted in authenticity. And so I mention this because if you're on the fence about being authentic yourself, and in this journey of love conquering your own fear, to share more, right? Create a container where people can open up to you more. It may actually be the thing that becomes a catalyst for, things that you don't expect. I would have never expected when our daughter got into Tulane. I had no relationship at all with Tulane University. And I didn't graduate from Tulane University, that I would be getting an award as Entrepreneur of the Year from Tulane University. But I will tell you that it was authentic for me falling in love with the school after Rachel's telling me so many beautiful things about it. And I'm seeing how much it manifests love on campus, to get involved in the Innovation Institute, to get involved with the Family Leadership Council, really fell in love with President Fitz. As I've told him many times, Adam Grant, who is a friend of mine, who's a very well-known professor at the Wharton School, author of many books, famous TED speaker, he told me at Penn, when President Fitz left as the dean of the law school of Penn to become the president of Tulane University, everybody on the staff cried. And that shows you how much love he was manifesting there. And you can just feel it all over the campus. So huge, huge honor. It is public news at this point as of this recording, but that'll be a really beautiful night on March 10th with family there. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I just wanted to share that bit because hopefully it'll help you on your journey with being more authentic and allowing love to conquer your own fear. Thanks again for all the love you're giving me. And please keep sharing. This is my love letter to humanity. I'm getting so much love from you. And let's do it together. It's Team Humanity all the way. Niraj and I are part of it, and we all are. Thank you so much.